Like if somebody tells me I can't do something, I had the mind like I'm gonna do it anyway. I loved basketball so much, I didn't care about being viewed as the cool kid. Because in my mind, it was like, well, if I get to where I wanna go, I'll be big guy on the block come high school reunions. When I'm done playing, that's when I'll reveal all the secrets. But until then, I gotta be mystery man.
You'll do your memoir, write it all down, that type of thing.
Yeah. I need all this fuel, like this burning fire. I'm throwing all these logs in here.
How do you feel about the constant debate around being named the best import ever in the NBL?
That's one of those, well, they'll get the real answer when I'm done playing. Nowadays, I'm like, ooh, can you do that, Bryce? I'll remind myself of the past, and it's like, man, hell yeah, you can do that. Keep believing.
Hello and welcome to Under the Surface, Pumps by Reebok. I'm your host, Anneli Maley, and I'm here today with Bryce Cotton. Thank you for joining us. What have you been up to today?
We had practice, and then, I had to do a whole bunch of recovery stuff. So jumped in the cryo, stretches, iced the knees, the normal stuff right around now because we're getting ready to head off for this road trip. When
you have like a full off day and you don't have to be in the stadium at all, what do you do? Like, what is your kind of everyday look like, I guess?
Full off day, wake up. I still get my stretching routine in. I'll go to the cryo, and then we'll probably take the little one, so our daughter, me and my wife will take our daughter to the park for a little bit. And then after that, I'm watching basketball, whether it's an old game of mine, an NBL game or old NBA game. But just trying to find ways to study different stuff.
Are you like a gamer, or you do any of that, like Fortnite, nothing? Okay.
Nah, so like if I have a friend that has a video game system at their house, I'll play it there. But as far as when I'm at home, no. Like I got a PS4, but I use it for like Netflix and all that.
Nice. Because I think that like a lot of the time when I ask professional athletes like what they do in their off time, a lot of it seems to be like something to get their brain out of basketball. So, but a lot of what you said was like recovery and basketball stuff. But like when you hang out with your family, that's like your off time, I guess.
And even in saying that, still we might be, watching a game, like me and my wife. We'll probably still watch a game. So I think for me, I try not to switch off when I'm in season. I think that's why I cherish my off season so much. Because then that's my time to really unwind, because I'm on go for like a full 7-8 months.
Okay, that actually makes sense. So like an off season where you do switch off, like what does that look like?
So I switch off for about 2 to 3 weeks. So I don't do anything basketball related, but I'll still, swim or do biking. Swimming's a great exercise for me because I'm not the best swimmer. So I got to use every muscle in my body. But other than that, I love hoops. So my life is very centered around that. And, luckily my wife, she's known that's what I'm about since she met me. So she's never tried to change it. Yeah.
Well, we were just talking about how you don't swim in the ocean. So when you're swimming, not in the ocean.
It's a pool. I'm from Arizona.
There won't be a day where we see you doing laps in the ocean? That's not a thing?
Never catch me doing laps. You might see me knee deep. I'm trying to work my way up to that, but I won't be doing any
How
laps.
long have you been in Perth now and you're only up to the knee deep part?
Look, that's a big milestone for me. But since 2017, I've been out here. So
okay, so I kind of want to wind things back to like you as a kid. How would people describe like young Bryce? What was young Bryce like?
I think it depends who you ask.
So if I was to ask a family member, I'll start with that. If I was to ask a family member like what you were like as a kid, what would that be like?
Yeah, so if you was asking a family member that was like an adult at the time, they'd say I was, very well-mannered, polite, and just a very good, nice kid. You ask some of my cousins or close friends, I was sneaky, still cool, but I was sneaky. So
you could just find your way around people finding out that you were a troublemaker, is what you're saying?
No, I was sneaky enough to just, I kind of always stayed out of the spotlight. But, so I knew how to act around adults, put it that way.
Do you come from a big family, or like what was your family like?
Nah, not really, but we was pretty tight knit. So the immediate family for me growing up was my mom, my brother, my grandmother, and basically we all lived together. But then my great grandmother and her brother as well, they played a big part in helping raise me and my brother too. So that was cool.
And you grew up in Arizona?
That's right, Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like, did you go to like all of your schooling in Arizona? Like, where did you go to college and stuff?
So I went to college in Providence. 1 year of high school, I went in Vegas.
Okay.
So yeah, I moved around a little bit, but for the most part, like I'm Tucson to the core.
Okay.
But when I went to Providence, that was pretty dope because it was the other side of the country for me. And I had never really even heard of Rhode Island before I went out there. Such a beautiful place. And to this day, like, you know, I love it. It's very beautiful. It's actually called the Ocean State, but they don't have the same type of beaches as Perth though.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anywhere does, to be honest. Sorry, I jumped ahead. I didn't mean to. I was just interested. But back to you as a youngin'. Do you remember, like, were you always interested in like sports, or like were you just like, how did you get into playing basketball or any sport for that matter?
So my older brother, he was 8 years older than me. So basically anything he did or his friends was doing, I wanted to do too.
Yeah.
Because I looked up to him a lot. So he would play football, basketball, baseball, so would his friends. So I was just trying to tag along, and that's kind of how I got introduced to all the different sports. And I loved all the sports I played.
What did you start with? Like, what was your first memory, like, if you could? Or is that too far back?
No. So I would say my first love for sure was football. I really love football. Baseball was good as well for me. That was my brother's favorite sport.
Yeah.
But my mom, she magically like missed the signups like 2-3 years in a row. So I kind of just stopped wanting to play that. And I had some like medical issues as well, which didn't allow me to keep playing football. So like it just kind of fizzled out to basketball was like the only sport left I can play that wouldn't interfere with my medical situation. So by default, I had to just keep rolling with that.
What medical issues, if you don't mind me asking? We can skip over it if you like, but...
it was a rare form of epilepsy, but they didn't know what it was at the time. So they were just trying to take all the precautions they could to eliminate any type of head knocks.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Although basketball, that's different. There's a lot of different type of contact in that too. Like, was the idea of your, like, was that still kind of scary for you, or like more for your mom to like see you knowing that like you're trying to eliminate any sort of head knock, but then putting you into a contact sport?
I wouldn't say it was scary because like at that time, we still didn't know exactly what was wrong. Like we didn't find out for at least 2 years what was actually wrong with me. But you got to remember too, I'm 9 years old at this time.
Yeah.
So by default, that is the least physical sport.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sure you look at it now, it's very physical, but for some 9-year-olds, that was the safest bet.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And then throughout like primary school, high school, do you remember a moment when you're like, nah, this is what I want to do, like this is it? Like, does that come down to anything in particular for you?
Yeah, I knew early on that I wanted to play professional basketball. I knew I wanted to make it to the NBA. And I think being from Tucson, Arizona, there wasn't a lot of people in the sports world, especially basketball, that have gone on to do a lot of things. So I took pride in trying to be one of the few. And I remember asking my mom, I think I might have been 3rd grade or something like that, like, has anybody made it to the NBA from Tucson? And the 2 names she said was this dude, Fat Lever, and Sean Elliott. And I was like, is that it? She said, yeah. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to be the 3rd. And I remember telling her that. And eventually I made the NBA. But then when I made it, I actually found out there was one other random person from Tucson that made it. So I was actually the 4th.
You were actually the 4th.
Yeah, I was the 4th. But that dude was from back in the day too. Like,
okay, yeah, so you're the 4th. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, 4 is a good number. I could take that. As
like a younger kid, say things are starting to get more serious. You're in high school now, you're playing hoop, whatever. Were you always like super dialed in? Like, do you have like do you remember like your routine? Like what were you, like, what was your relationship to your craft like at that point in your life?
Yeah, it's funny, man. Like I always had a routine. I always knew what I wanted to do. And at that time I was a very short kid. So I want to say grade 9, I was probably 5'4", 108 pounds. I was very little.
Yeah.
But I wanted to like continue to learn how to jump high. So I used to do all these different jump programs, and they had these things that came out. I don't know if you've heard of it, called jump soles. And so like they basically look like these like cinder blocks that they stop like halfway up under your feet. Yeah. And like there's this routine, and I had the manual. I used to read it and do the regime faithfully week by week. But I'd even walk to school or go to school in those shoes.
Oh my God.
And like people used to laugh and like, what the hell do you have on? Yeah. And I used to say, don't worry about it. Like these are gonna make me jump higher. And we had a lot of stairs at the high school I was at. So like it was such a workout, like on my calves. And I can remember like all my boys and just kind of other people at the school teasing. And I remember saying to myself, like, okay, you won't be laughing when I'm in the NBA. I remember saying that. But and I think for me, I loved basketball so much. I didn't care about being viewed as the cool kid. Because in my mind, it was like, well, if I get to where I want to go, I'll be big guy on the block come high school reunion. So I was always kind of a long-term goal type person.
That's interesting, because at that age, like most kids are so consumed by being like liked by their peers and like cool, like I think when I was in like 9th grade, I was like, the most important thing is being the coolest person, like I want everyone to like me, Do you like remember the first time someone like questioned your ability or like told you that you wouldn't be able to make it or like you couldn't do it or something like that? Like, cause like for me, like I remember like, I mean, being a female athlete, it's a little different because like I used to get teased by my peers about like, oh, what are you going to do? Like playing the WNBA, like there's no like that level of like teasing, I guess. Do you remember being told that like you weren't going to make it, that type of thing?
I do. I think a lot throughout my basketball journey, like I was doubted at every level. So it was more rare hearing somebody that wasn't my mom or my grandma saying like I actually had a future in basketball. So that was no strange thing for me to hear. But like I was just so set in my beliefs, and my mom and my grandma did a great job just basically instilling that confidence in me. And eventually it got to the point where I believed it too. And nobody could really break that, or no obstacle either.
So you would say that like self-belief, that like unwavering self-belief, you think that came from like your mom and your grandma, and then also like you, I guess, in the end. But like self-belief is huge that so many people just don't have it, right? And like throughout our careers, for me, I say we, like professional athletes, right? Like we're always like trying to find it in pockets, and it kind of dips in and dips out. How did you like find this self-belief? Like, would you say it was from like those interactions and like those positive affirmations with your family, or?
I would say it's intertwined. I would say naturally I had a little bit of that in me anyway. Like if somebody tells me I can't do something, I had the mind like I'm gonna do it anyway. But then, having your mom and your grandma, who was basically like another mother to me, always instilling that belief too, like, yep, you're going to make it. You keep working. And they saw my work ethic. It made me feel like, all right, well, I believe in myself. My mom, my grand do too. So it don't matter what the whole world has to say. Like I'm going to get there. And it was about making myself proud and making those proud that supported me throughout my journey.
That's really cool. I think that especially for people listening, like that have kids, right? Like a lot of the questions that I get written in like every other week or something are like from parents of basketball players or athletes. Like, how do I instill my kid with confidence? Like that type of thing. What would be your advice to like a younger person listening and or a parent on how to like build up their kid, like how to instill them with that self-belief?
I would say from a parent standpoint, support your kid. Like if you feel they're very passionate about something, they really want to pursue it, support them and make sure not only are you supporting them, they need to know that, you have their back. And I guess I could follow that with one example. When I had to get interviewed for like the high school my mom went to, and they were just testing me out to see if I fit their criteria or whatever. And they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. Up until that point, I had passed all the tests. as far as like, okay, he's very smart, he's very polite, all that BS, you know? And I was like, oh, I want to go to the NBA. And they were like, oh, okay, that's cool. But like, what do you really want to do? And I looked at them again. I was like, I'm going to go to the NBA. Well, what's your backup plan? I don't have one. I'm going to go to the NBA. And I remember this person, because my mom is behind me. They just kind of stopped looking at me and they looked to my mom as if like, do you want to rephrase the question to him? Yeah. And I looked at my mom and she's just staring back at him as if to say, you heard what he said. Yeah. And that, I was in 7th grade when that happened. And that stood out to me too. Like, you know, yeah, you damn right. Like I told you what I'm going to do and I'm going to do it. Yeah. And I love the fact that my mom did that. And who knows, like maybe if she, I guess, folds in that situation, not to say it changes the whole course of my career, but that might have had an effect. But just her constantly reaffirming like, yep, I'm rocking with you through and through. That did a lot for me as well, to just keep that belief I had in myself.
That's wild. I love that story. That's really cool. Your mom sounds like an amazing woman.
Definitely.
So like moving into kind of like your college experience, right? What was your college experience like for you? Because like college, man, is like a melting pot of like humans put into this one high pressure situation, and they're just kind of like figure it out, you know? I only stayed. I went to Oregon for a year. I only lasted 1 year. But did you do all 4?
I did.
What was your college experience like?
Yeah,
that's a loaded question. I'm aware. Like we can get into bits and pieces.
Very loaded. I would say generalizing it, it helped me realize, you know, do I really want what I say I want? And for me, it was such a big deal because, you know, I graduated high school without a scholarship. I got offered by Providence probably within a week before school started. So I went through that whole, I guess, summer, like, not knowing what's going to happen. Like, will I get to play college ball? Does my basketball dream stop here? And when I get offered on the other side of the country, it was mind blowing to me because it was random. They never really recruited me. And like I had been turned down by Division II schools and Northern Arizona, Montana State. They also said like I wasn't tough enough to make it in a conference. So in my mind, I was like, okay, these are the lowest levels of Division I, and D2's turning me down. But yet a Big East school comes in and offers me a scholarship. So I took it as, okay, here's your one opportunity. You got to make this thing work somehow, some way. And for me, it was like, I was just in awe of everything, I think, my freshman year, because I couldn't believe I was in college. Like, that whole year I was trying to process, like, how the hell did I get this scholarship, honestly? And playing against coaches like, you know, Rick Pitino, I think, is it Jim Boeheim, Calhoun, all these coaches I used to see as a kid when I'd watch college games with my family. And it's like, wow, I'm playing against these people. So I was in awe of it. And I didn't play a lot my freshman year. But then from there, after that, it was like, okay, honeymoon stage is over. It's time to lock in and make this thing work, because otherwise they're going to send me packing. Yeah.
Do you remember the first like real test of like was there a test of your love of basketball through your time in college?
A test of my love of basketball? No.
But a test of I'm trying to think of the word. Like, what would you say your biggest struggle, or if you had one at college, was?
Okay, so trying not to go on a spiel.
No, go. We can roll from whatever.
So backtracking, right? In high school, like everything, like I worked for everything I got. So I didn't start off in high school playing varsity. I played freshman as a freshman. I played JV my sophomore year. And then I moved to Vegas for my junior year. That didn't really go as planned. And I like basically begged my mom, like, you got to let me move back to Tucson, because I don't think this is going to work out if I do it my senior year in Vegas at the high school I was at. And I had told her, like, look, this is my dream. So basically let me make the decision on this. I'm like, if we go back to Tucson and it don't work out, I'm like, that's on me and I can live with that. I'm like, but if it doesn't pan out and I stay here for my senior year in Vegas, I can't live with that, because this wasn't, like, I didn't want to move here in the first place. And my mom just kind of stared at me and she was like, okay, well, a 16-year-old sounding that well thought out, like, all right, you can move back. And so I basically only had one real year of varsity, and I torched it back in Arizona, first team, all city, all state. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, I was like, oh, all I needed was an opportunity. So I'm thinking like I'm this, that, and the third. Yeah. And so not playing as a freshman at Providence, it crushed me. And I would say from December on for the rest of the season, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror for the rest of the season because I was so disgusted with myself not playing. Mm-hmm. And where I'm from growing up, there was basically a rival. Mm-hmm. So it was me and this dude, Terrell Stogler. And everybody used to always talk about in the city, okay, who's better? Is it Bryce? Is it Terrell? Depending on which side of town you grew up on, you had a different answer. Yeah. And he was killing it at Maryland. And I'm hearing it from everybody back home. Like, see, Bryce ain't that good. Terrell's killing it in Maryland. He's riding the bench. And I take basketball, like serious. So it was crushing me and I couldn't even look at myself. So it didn't make me quit, but it made me have to dig deeper back inside of like, all right, well, you got to figure out a way to get on the floor next season and, make your mark, because I'm not finna just keep letting all these people back home talk crazy about me and not give the people that do support me, not give them something to argue back with, know? So I would say that was probably my biggest trying time.
Universally, for a lot of people, freshman year is like such a test, not just of like their basketball, them as people, right? You're exposed to so many different things, and like you're American, so like the cultural difference, I guess, isn't as big as like someone coming from internationally and all that type of thing. I think I know that a lot of people struggle from like in the Australian system going over to the States for their first year, and like, you talking about like being so disappointed in yourself and like disgusted in yourself, like you couldn't even look at yourself in the mirror. Mm-hmm. Like first of all, like when you say that, like were you like anxious? Like what type of feelings were you getting? Like if you can talk me through the emotions of that, and then how did you pull yourself out of that space? Like, cause that's the part that like a lot of people can't grasp, cause like they hit their low and then they don't know how to get out of that,
I would say for me, the biggest thing I did was just understand like, okay, this season's probably not going to go as planned. So I have to mentally somewhat accept this for what it is. But then I channeled everything into that off season of like, okay, I'm going to work harder than I've ever worked in my life. I'm going to do everything I can to get on the floor. And then I detached myself from the result of I have to perform. Mm-hmm. So my freshman year, I was like, okay, I have to do this. I got to, tick off all these goals. When that didn't go as planned, it was like, Bryce, scrap that. Just do everything that you can to get on the floor. And then whatever happens, happens. If you don't play again your sophomore year, at least you'll know it had nothing to do with you not working hard enough. Yeah. So detaching from, I guess, the outcome and just being married to effort, that's when like all the results started to come, because I had a breakout season there, and then a bunch of other stuff kept happening each season. But never looked back after that.
I like that. So it's like you almost don't put the expectation of an outcome, right? Like it's all about putting your energy and all of the thoughts and the effort into like the process, like process driven.
Yes. So to this day, my cousin, he's like my little brother, Christian. I tell him, I pride myself on effort over results all day, every day, because you can control the effort you put in. You can't always control what the results are going to be. And for me, I think that's why I used to to this day, that's why I still work so hard, because it gives me a peace of mind of whatever the results are. Like if it turns out great, perfect. I worked hard, I'm reaping the benefits. But if it goes, pear-shaped, I gave it everything I had. This is just what was in the cards. I could live with that. Yeah. But if you don't, bust your ass basically to be all you can be, and then it doesn't go well, you can't say that's what was in the cards, because you didn't actually apply yourself. So I work hard for a peace of mind, detached from what the outcome is going to be, knowing I want a good outcome, but it's like, look, it's going to be what it's going to be.
Yeah. I like that. I feel like we could clip that. That's actually that's a really good piece of advice. Moving from college into like the professional aspects of your life. How did your professional career start? Like in basketball, like what was the first step for you?
Fast forwarding, my senior year, right, of college, we won the Big East championship, second in scoring, and led the conference in assists. And we made the tournament for the first time in a decade. And then opening game of the tournament, I had 36 on Carolina, which is the most anybody's ever scored against them in tournament history. Not bragging. I say all that to say I didn't even get an invite to the combine. Yeah. Which just sums up my whole career. Like, no matter how good I do, he's not good enough for whatever reason. So I ended up not getting drafted. And the most difficult thing for me was being at home, watching the draft. And my agent kept calling me, letting me know the Spurs were calling him saying they wanted to draft me in the second round, but they were going to do a draft and stash because at that season, or the most recent season, they won the championship. And they said, we're going to bring back everybody on our roster from last year. So there's no way you'll make it, but we love you. We want to keep an eye. So we'll draft you. We'll send you overseas. And my agent was like, what do you think of that? And I was just like, no, I can't do it. And I didn't have a lot of time, probably had 4 minutes to make a decision. And the way I saw it was, okay, if I say yes, they're going to draft me. My family's going to be happy and all this stuff. But I'm the one that knows deep down, I'm not playing in the NBA this year. They're going to send me overseas. And I didn't want to wave a white flag basically on that year for my dream to come true after all the roadblocks I had to overcome to even get to that point. And then I'm right here at the finish line in my mind. And it's like, you're going to throw another obstacle in your own way. I was like, no, I'd rather just not get drafted. And they called I think they called 2 or 3 times because they had 3 picks in the second round, I believe. So they called around like the 52nd pick, the 56th, and the 58th. And each time it got harder, telling my agent, no, I'm sure. Like, I don't want them to draft me. Yeah. And to this day, it's my most proud thing, though, because I bet on myself. I stood for what I believed in, regardless of how it was going to pan out. And I ended up signing to the Utah Jazz later on that same season. So I was right in sticking to my guns, and my dream came true. And I'm more happy than I ever thought I'd be to say, no, I was never drafted in the NBA.
Yeah. Do you remember the moment, like the phone call or like when you found out that you were going to Utah?
Yeah. So I was in the D League, they called it at the time. And I was on a tear. Like I was playing very well. We were playing, the Jazz's D League team affiliate. And I think we played them like 3 games in like 2-week span or whatever. But I had a total of like 90 points against them in those 3 games. And I guess it was like, okay, enough is enough. My agent called me when we were at the airport, and he said, Utah's going to offer you a 10-day. And I remember it was right before we took off on the plane, and I just kept thinking about like, wow, I did it. The promise to myself, what I told my mom, and I'm thinking of just all the obstacles up until that point. It's like, my dream's about to come true. And I remembered also, like, I said, I told, San Antonio, I didn't want them to draft me. Like, it paid off. Those were like some of the first things that came to my mind.
That's so dope, man. That's so dope. Like, imagine betting on yourself and like knowing that it's going to work out. Like, that is just like the coolest thing ever. Like, I think a lot of the time, like, the idea of betting on yourself is seen as like arrogant these days. And it's not. It's like that self-belief isn't arrogance. They're completely different things, right?
Right.
Like, that's like a very like overview version. I just wanted for the people that don't know you, which will barely be anyone, to like understand like a little bit of like how your career has gone from like little Bryce to like current Bryce. But I want to ask you about certain things, like just a couple of like mindset things. I guess a lot of the time, like you kind of spoke a little bit about like hearing people talk about you in a negative light. And as your career has gone on, I'm sure it just gets worse. Personally, I'm really bad at not listening to what other people say about me. It's one of the things I try and work on the most. Like all the tweets get to me, everything that anyone ever writes, I'm like, but why would they think that about me? So I'd love to hear how you don't listen to that stuff, or like how do you turn that off? Like, cause I'm sure you hear all of it, you know? How do you do that, man?
I think how you cope with it, kind of changes over the years as you change as a person. But for me, I used to listen to all of it because it was like, I need all this fuel, like this burning fire. I'm throwing all these logs in here. And then after a while, you know, you kind of keep proving people wrong, and you see they kind of just start reaching for things. And then I realized, like, especially out here, I think in Australia, it was like, oh, you guys really don't mean half the things you say. You're just saying stuff for attention. So then it started to become comical, and I just, you know, for the most part, I block it out, but also certain things I may grab, like, and keep it in the back of my mind. But the best tool I would say for me was always feeling like it was me against the world. Like my whole life, I always kind of felt like it was me against the world. So I was always on guard or distant with people anyway. So if you had something bad to say about me, I didn't care anyway, because you know, I can't say what my real mentality is on here, but it was me against the world, to put it politely. And one thing my gran used to tell me as well, she used to say, it doesn't matter. It's not your business what people say about you, whether they talk good about you or bad. And that's something that I kept in mind when my basketball career started to look more promising. Because that's when all the, I knew you could do it. When all those people started to come out, that's when like it clicked with my gran, said like, oh, so you know what? It's not just about the bad stuff people say. You got to let the stuff, mainly the good stuff people say, go in one ear and out the other, because all that matters is what you actually think of yourself anyway. You heard of like the tall poppy syndrome? You know what that is? Nah. In Australia, it's like we love to, when people are doing good or like being successful, we love to cut each other down. It's like we're not great at, you know what I'm talking about, right? You know what tall poppy syndrome? People in the US, they celebrate a lot better champions. They celebrate success. Where in Australia, if someone does well, there's this habit of, oh, he's not that good, cutting them down. That's interesting. Y'all think Americans don't do that. Comparatively, I don't know. There's probably another word for it or something, but okay, I'm familiar with that. So I guess being as like successful as you have been over here, like, do you feel like people are just waiting for you to fall, you know? I don't know, but I will say it was definitely an adjustment for me being out here. This was the first time in my career being in Australia where my name is a household name. I've always been a guy that's flown under the radar. So the fact that, you know, it seems like to me a lot of times, no matter what I do, if it's something good, it doesn't catch anybody by surprise. Nobody makes a big deal of it. But the second I don't play well or have a couple games where I'm not typically myself, it's the end of the world, and everybody's ready to talk about that. So, that's the tall puffies. That's so I mean, I got my opinions on how certain people talk, but that's the territory it comes with. And at the end of the day, if I do feel like those things are starting to get to me, I just kind of remind myself, like, look, this journey started with you, your mom, and your gran. So anybody else that's come on board after them, they don't really matter. And that kind of helps me get rid of whatever I'm holding on to that somebody might have said or people might have said to me. I love that. Yeah. What's your, like, this is kind of broad, but if you could maybe you could even put it into a spiel, like, what's your why? What motivates you every day? Like, what is your why for doing what you do? I think for me, my why is basically everything that I've said I wanted to do with basketball. I think I've done it to the 99th percentile. And the fact that I'm so blessed to have done that, I want to keep this ride going for as long as I can, because coming from Tucson and the obstacles I had to overcome to get here, it was not normal and it wasn't expected, especially from, you know, where I'm from. And there's a lot of guys that I played with or against that had the skills to play college ball or even play pro and never got that break. So as much as I do it for myself, I do it for those people that didn't get the opportunity as well that I grew up with, because if Providence doesn't call, this could have very easily not been my life, and I would have never left Tucson. So I'm very, very appreciative of my journey and the fact that I'm still doing what I love. I just want to make it last for as long as possible. So when it's done, the story's worth being told to where it can reach younger kids, because I feel who can't relate to always being doubted, you know, and understanding just because that might be your starting point, that don't mean that's going to be the finish line. This guy, one of my assistant coaches back in the day, he had a saying that belief was stronger than reality. And that's kind of how I always thought. I just never coined it in that term. And I say that to say, like, no matter what your current situation is, even if you're down here in life, but your goal is to get here, if you believe strong enough and you align your actions with those thoughts, your belief will become stronger than this reality and you get to where you're trying to go. So I still remind myself of that to this day when I'm still setting goals that may not be, you know, realistic.
Are you a big goal setter? Like, that's your thing? I've
always been that.
What does that process look like for you? Like, when you're trying to, like, at the end of every season, do you kind of sit down and go like, oh, this is what I want? Or like, what does that goal setting process look like?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I don't think too long. I'll figure out like what I really want. I won't say things that, you know, okay, this sounds like a good goal to have. Like, I'll really ask myself, like, all right, what do you actually really want to do this season? And I'll figure it out. And it's like, okay, here's the goal. Here's how we're going to work to get it. And then throughout the off season, it's more so about just reaffirming that belief that I can achieve this goal. And sometimes, you know, I have to remind myself of, it's okay to dream big, and you're supposed to keep dreaming big. And then I'll think about some of the goals I had when I was younger. And I'm like, think about where you were at when you set those goals and how unrealistic it might have seemed, but you got there. Yeah. So sometimes if I set a goal nowadays, I'm like, ooh, can you do that, Bryce? I'll remind myself of the past. And it's like, man, hell yeah, you can do that. Keep believing. And, you know, my grand, she's not with me. She's not with us no more. But I always lean back on things that she's said or taught me over the years more these days. So she's basically still with me in my mind. So those words of advice help a lot.
I think that probably leads into my next question, which was like, if you got a chance to sit down with like little 11-year-old Bryce, what would you say to him?
Yeah, I would say everything that you're thinking is right. Stick to it. You know, I've seen that before on Facebook and stuff like that, where people are like, oh, if you could talk to your younger self, what advice would you give? What would you say? But literally, mine would just be, you got it figured out. Like, just keep doing what you're doing.
I'm imagining, like, you know, that scene that you described of like you sitting and talking to the interviewer and then your mum behind you, and then there's like older you behind your mum, like, exactly. Exactly. What she said, what he said, you know? No, like, actually, that's kind of cool. And then I guess like a lot of to be a high performance athlete, like, and you are like going all day, every day, and physically, like you talked about some of like the physical recovery and that type of thing. What do you do to keep your mind strong? And then on top of that, like, what is the importance of like, you know, working on this as much as your physical body?
I would say the mind, it's so important. Like, it doesn't matter how good your skills are. If your mind's not right, it's never going to translate on the floor. And ironically, even if you don't work on your game as much as you should, sometimes if you really believe in yourself, you can play better than what you are for spurts. So the mind is so crucial. And I think as far as what do I do to stay in the same shape and condition, I stick to what I know. And I've had the same regime for the last 7-8 years, and there's no shocks to my body. I've been the same weight since I left high school. So I always try to make sure I stay at that weight, because if this is all my body knows, then it should be able to continue to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And because I'm a very superstitious person.
Yeah, I found that out before.
Yeah, it's been, fortunately it's been working. So it's like, well, I'm not going to change anything anytime soon. Exactly.
Yeah. And yeah, I like that, I guess. Do you have you spoke about your grandma and your mum, but do you have someone in your life that has mentored you professionally? Like, do you have maybe people that you've listened to or books that you've read that have changed the way you've thought about things, or little bits of advice here and there?
I wouldn't say I've had anybody particularly mentor me throughout my professional career, but I've had people that have had impacts. So, and it was before I became a pro, but this guy, Shammgod, you might have heard of him, or maybe not, I don't know. He was like a big brother to me at Providence, and he gave me so much advice on how to approach the game and how to make sure basically you always stay true to your goals. And at that time, he gave me very good advice that you wouldn't expect a coach to tell you in college. And I think I just took to it more because he was he didn't feel like a coach. He felt just like another player.
Yeah.
So, and probably because he was closer to our age than the actual coaches. But yeah, Sham, he's given me a lot of great advice in college, and it's kind of stuck with me over the years. And every now and again, I might ask him a question or two. But yeah, for the most part, it's all been internal because I don't like to let people in my mind anyway to know what I'm thinking. Yeah. When I'm done playing, that's when I'll reveal all the secrets. But until then, I gotta be mystery man.
You'll do your memoir, write it all down, that type of thing. God, I bet there's people waiting for that one. Shit. Okay, I wanna. I mean, I don't even know if any of these things apply to you, but do you ever get nervous now in your professional career, at this stage? Do you get nervous before games or anxious or anything like that?
Yeah, I have anxiety. So I get anxiety before every game. I've had that ever since I was a kid. But I think for me, like I said, with the learning curve of how do you deal with, instead of just, I want to do well, because this is what I expect of myself to, okay, you got to do well because, everybody expects you to do all this stuff. That was new for me. So that anxiety had kicked up probably my first couple years out here. And then I just learned how to manage that and remind myself, hey, detach yourself from outcomes. Yeah. And then just be you, and whatever happens, happens. Because just being you is what's gotten you here. But now once you try to get all analytical and calculate how can you be great, that's when you start messing up.
Is it hard for you to openly say that you have anxiety, or is that something at some point in your career you were just I can be open about that? Because I know for not just professional sports men, but men in general, to talk openly about mental health and anxiety and depression and all that stuff is quite difficult. And what's the word I'm looking for? Stigmatized. There we go.
No, it's not hard for me to talk about because a lot of the reading I've done on successful people, whether they're athletes, business people, whatever, most highly successful people have some type of performing anxiety. So to me, it's okay, that just comes with the territory. And I don't try to change it. I saw this meme before, when The Last Dance came out, and it was when Jordan was swinging the baseball bat, listening to R&B music. Somebody was like, oh, if Jordan would have went to therapy, he probably would have averaged 4 points a game. Yeah. And it's funny, but when you think about it, it's probably true. If he resolves whatever issues he got going on, he loses that drive to perform. So I accepted a long time ago, this is just how I am, and I'm not going to change it because this is part of what makes me who I am. So, so I just accept that this is what it comes with.
You're not actually the first person in the last couple of weeks to say that. I was talking to this netball player, Kelsey Brown. She's an amazing netball player. And she was like, my anxiety is my superpower when it comes to sport because it separates me from everyone else because it gives me that extra edge and pushes me in that way. And I'm like, I never really thought about it like that. I always kind of saw my anxiety as something that always hindered me in situations. And again, I'm working on this stuff. I'm getting much better at it, but I would always let it consume me. Like I couldn't like perform with the anxiety because it was just like I was just a big ball of like anxious thoughts, and then I'd be like, oh, I'll run a play, like I just forget about that stuff. So I like the idea that it is a superpower and that it's not like a shameful thing to be like, yeah, and it makes me great. You know?
Sure.
I think that's really cool.
And I think like also adding to that, right? Like being honest with yourself. Like I feel like a lot of times whether people talk about goals or whether people talk about how they think, especially in this day and age, they just want to say stuff that sounds great out loud, but it's like it's not actually real.
Yeah.
And like I guess tagging along with that superpower thing, for me, the anxiety, it allows me to stay not humble. Humble's not the word I'm looking for, but like it allows me to stay aware and hungry of like, okay, I have to perform. So I'm not going into a game of, oh, I'm so good. And, you know, coming in like Mr. Cool. I got a running joke with Vaughn, you know, that Mr. Cool, like if you act like that, you know, that gets you sent home real quick. So for me, like, being anxious, I'm on guard, I'm aware, I'm paranoid. So like, I'm so attentive, and that allows me to be my best because I guess it heightens my focus. So if I don't have my anxiety, maybe I'm too relaxed. Yeah. I'm in a good state of mind, but now I'm not out there doing nothing. I'm just running around. So,
Yeah. So in your like basketball life, right? It's long span and there's still so much more of it to go. Do you rely, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Do you separate your sense of identity from you as an athlete, or do you see yourself as like Bryce the basketball player, or are you Bryce that plays basketball? Do you know kind of what I'm asking? Like, how do you define yourself as a human?
Yeah, I don't separate myself from basketball. I think just because of what basketball means to me, I think it's saved my life, the direction of my life in more ways than one. And so it's hard for me to just take it as just a game.
Yeah, for sure.
And so because of that, it's like what I do at this game defines me because it gave me purpose in my life. So I don't even know if it's possible for me to not attach myself to that identity as a basketball player. Yeah.
I mean, there's no wrong answer there. It's more that like, I know some people struggle with the idea of like that being their identity. But I guess that kind of leads me into my next question is like, if you have that so tied up in your sense of self, right? When you have a bad game or like a bad performance, how do you then like get over that, having that as such like a big part of yourself? And I'm asking this question not just for other people, but for me, right? Like basketball, it means so much to me that when I don't play well, sometimes it really affects me walking off the court. Like, and not just like, I try and like sometimes leave it there or go home and watch it or whatever. But sometimes it then affects like how I see myself and like how confident I am with myself and like my perception of like how worthy I am, I guess. So how do you deal with that, if you do at all?
Yeah, no, it's the same thing. So if you have a tough game, I think it's two parts for me. So if it's a tough game and let's say we played on Thursday and we play again Saturday or Sunday, like, of course I'm upset, but I'm like, you know what? Okay, on this game on Sunday, once that game starts, this Thursday game will never matter again the rest of your life. Yeah. So it's just like, okay, let's just hurry up and get to Sunday or whatever, right? So that's kind of how I'll deal with that. But then if it's a slump and you got like weeks in between the games, that's a very, very trying time. Yeah. Because I'm not one of those people where it's like, all right, the game's over, like better luck next time. Like, nah, I carry that stuff. Yeah. So it's not something I've quite figured out. Yeah. I guess the healthy way to deal with it. But I just kind of accept that's how I am, that if it's going to be a long week for me going into the next game, that's what it's going to be, because that's just how I am. Yeah. And there's nothing that would make me feel better because I'm, like you said, I'm attached to that identity. But luckily, you know, the belief doesn't waver. It's just wanting to get that game out of your mind.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. And playing this long in our careers and even your career, you have enough of a sample size to remind yourself like, okay, this game might have happened, or these 2-3 games in a row might have happened.
Yeah.
But over the course of my life, this has proven I'm a great player. So overall, the cream will always rise to the top. So, you know, I think that's the benefit for us playing this long in our careers. Yeah. We got enough of a sample size to know who we are.
Yeah. I say that to myself, but my self-belief is terrible. Like I work on it. I see a psych and the sports psych and all that. That's something that I'm trying to get to, where like just listening to you talk about like the self-belief from a young age is just the coolest thing ever. Like I can't fathom that really in my brain. I just don't think my brain was ever wired that way, but I'm trying to make it right. Like I'm going back in time and trying to rewire all the neural pathways, try and get it to that place, you know, like I do think it's like super cool. Anyway, I digress. So before I get on to answering everybody else's questions, I have a couple more of my own. So as a male athlete, like you, and like what you said, like you're a household name, like people know who you are. Like, how do you deal with the idea of like, I want to word this correctly. How are you able to speak your truth without worrying that people are going to take it the wrong way? Like, are you ever censored? Do you ever feel like no one will ever get to see like the real version of Bryce? That type of thing. Cause I know like there's so many misconceptions about professional athletes, like that we're stupid and we're this and we're that, you know? So like how does that sit with you, you know? I guess that was a confusingly worded question, but I was trying to piece together in my brain how I wanted to ask that, but do with what you will, you know?
I'll branch it together. I think for me, depending on who I'm around, like obviously you can't show everybody everything depending on who they are. And going back to my mom, my grandma, they used to say, there's a time and place for everything. So you can't act the same way around everybody. Mm-hmm. They told me that when I was like 5-6 years old. Yeah. And so to this day, that's exactly how I am. So like if I'm around people I don't know, whether it be media, whether it's just some people I don't know that well, I'm very, very quiet. I'll be a mute, you know? But then if I'm around people I know, I'm a completely different person. So I think being a professional athlete, you always have to be kind of calculated and pick and choose who you want to see certain sides of you. And then understanding there's certain times where you only need to show your professional side. So it's a balance. And I think the good thing with being in the games is you can just be yourself and you can let everything unwind, show your passion or however you do it, right? And then you let the fans take it however they want, because that's your moment to unleash whatever pent up emotions you may have, whether it's anxiety, whether it's because you're pissed off because people were talking bad about you, whatever it may be, that's your time to shine and I guess unleash your truth. And then don't worry about how people, I guess, take to it, because you're being who you are. So if people don't like it, that's not your problem anyway. Yeah. That was a great answer to a terribly worded question. I was like, I know what I'm trying to say, but trying to put it together, I was like, that wasn't my best work. Anyway, so the next segment of things is, they call this the rapid fire by Reebok, but it's never rapid fire because we usually delve into it. But I want to open with this one, and I'm not sure if Tuss was the one that actually wrote this in, but would you ever play for the Rockingham Flames in the NBL with your friend Devondrick Walker? Nah, I wouldn't do that. Maybe like a charity game or something. Okay, well, that's going to hurt some people's feelings, I think. Do you think about going back to the NBA before signing like more long-term deals or anything like that? Or is that chapter of your life, do you think, or do you not want to close the door on that? Like, yeah, like I haven't closed the door. It's just if the opportunity comes up, you know, I'll be there. But if not, I'm going to be here continuing to do what I do.
Would you ever leave Perth?
Yeah, if you talking about with the NBA?
Just in general, I guess. Like for basketball opportunities, you just kind of follow wherever it takes you.
Yeah, you never know what the future holds. I'm a guy that kind of stays in the moment. So I take it year by year. I'm here for now and I'm enjoying it and I'm not thinking about anything else at the moment.
Yeah. And then this isn't a question, but I'm interested. How do you deal with the, because I struggle with the like permanency of like always not knowing where you're going to be next. And like I guess like sometimes it can be like a fear-based thing. I know we can't make decisions out of fear, but like not knowing where's my next contract, where's my next this, like how do you and your family deal with that? Like, is that a weird thing for you guys, or you're kind of like, you're always knowing that wherever it is, it's going to be fine? Like the whole moving thing doesn't really faze you.
The moving thing doesn't really faze me. And it's not really worrisome because my wife is Australian, so she's from here. And luckily, I would say the last 3-4 years, I've always been under a contract where I know I'm here the following year. Yeah. So I haven't had to deal with the uncertainty like my first few years professionally. But it's definitely not something I take for granted because it's definitely a mental relief knowing like, okay, I know where I'm going to be for these next few years. And then, because you have outs or whatever, if you do go somewhere else, it's like, oh, well, this is an ideal thing if I'm not here. So either way, you're in a good situation.
What would your advice be to people just starting their professional careers? Like,
the biggest thing I would say is understanding everything is going to be a roller coaster. So things aren't always going to be bad. Things aren't always going to be good. It's going to be a vicious cycle of ups and downs. And the quicker you can figure that out, the better off you'll be.
That's a great answer. Name the best Aussies and imports that you've played with at the Wildcats.
Oh, wow.
If you can. Doesn't have to be one or two, but maybe some of the favorite people you played with in Australia.
My favorite people I played with in Australia, man. Golly, I'm going to hurt some feelings. You know what? I'm not going to answer. That's a slippery slope, but I'm just going to give a random shout out to Reese Vague and Money Mitch Norton. Yeah,
there you go. And then what about
and Damo, my bad. Yeah, superstar.
That's a hard question because I put you on the spot. I didn't even give you any time to really think about that. What about in your whole career then? Like overseas, everywhere. The favorite person you've ever played with?
My favorite person I've ever played with?
Person.
Man. It would probably be two people from my high school team in Tucson. Yeah. Devontae Harkins and this dude, Darian Coleman. Those were my dudes. It was like my brothers.
Yeah.
Oh, and shout out my man, Brian Hill. Shout out Brian Hill too.
We can always auto edit some things in later if you remember. We answered what drives you every day. We got that. That's when I said, what's your why? You kind of answered that one. And then how do you feel about the constant debate around being named the best import ever in the NBL? How does that make you feel?
That's one of those, well, they'll get the real answer when I'm done playing.
Fair. And then I'm not sure if you think that this has already been answered. I'm not sure if you could come back to like this was what you're talking about your freshman year at college, your biggest challenge in your career. That would be your freshman year, or is there another one?
My biggest challenge from a pure basketball standpoint, yes. I would say that was probably the most difficult one. Either that one or the 2020-2021 season. There was a lot of obstacles that season that was very, very tough. So those two in particular. And
it asks if you could go into it and how did you overcome it? Like if it was the 2021-22, what about that was so difficult for you?
I learned a lot about myself and just understanding, I guess, the importance of knowing how to channel your emotions and putting it out there on the floor. So for me, again, having that me against the world mentality, whatever I feel, whatever I'm going through, I usually keep it to myself. And that season was more important than ever of holding them emotions in. And then come game time, you just let all that stuff out. So it was just a reminder to me of what basketball has done for me in some trying times.
That's interesting, because I think from a onlooker standpoint, right? Like, we've just seen you be like super friggin' successful over the last couple of years here. And if you were to talk about like something that, like, a struggle that you went through, I don't think people would even put that, like, no one would even recognize that, you know? Like, it's interesting because, like, you can look back on that and be like, oh, I didn't know who was going through. Like, so that, like, kind of goes into my thing, is like, you never know what people are going through. You never know.
Right. You don't.
Like, they can be performing at their absolute height, but be going through some other stuff that you have no idea.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, I digress. I'll just kind of add a few more in here. What's your favorite part about playing in Australia?
My favorite part about playing in Australia, man.
Or the weirdest thing about living here, it says in brackets.
I guess my favorite part about playing in Australia is just the fact that I feel like fans are so loyal to their teams out here. Like, I think by comparison to America, fans nowadays are more cater to the league or whatever, but like fans stick to their teams. Like if they're from Victoria, they're gonna ride for their Melbourne teams. They're from WA. Like, I just love the loyalty that the fans have to their home teams. Like it's pretty unprecedented. Yeah.
And then what about like the lifestyle part? Like, what's the weirdest thing about living here? Like, did you have any weird experiences with, like, I think when I spoke to Ray John Tucker, he said something about like seeing a kangaroo for the first time and thinking like, what the what for you? Do you have like a something equivalent? I just realized I'm gonna have to bleep myself out there. My bad.
I was gonna say, no, I like this podcast. I would say just going into stores, you know, sometimes, and people don't have no shoes or socks on. Like, to this day.
That's me.
Like, I saw it again today. I was getting gas, or y'all call it petrol.
Yeah.
And the dude, he didn't have no sandals or shoes, socks, nothing. Like, I don't think I'll ever get used to that.
Yeah. That's me. When you run into me eventually and paying for petrol, I don't have shoes on, and 90% of the time I'm in my swimmers.
Yeah,
usually with my dog following me. Actually, he comes
like in the store.
Yeah, for the most part. He's got a little jacket on, like a service dog jacket. Like, I got his like service dog certificate like a couple years ago. I don't think I ever renewed it, but for like my anxiety and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just use that into the ground. Like, I take him to the like grocery store, to the movies. He comes to the movies with me.
Right.
It's the best. It is the best. Anyway, as I'll wrap up. So to the end, I usually ask these 3 questions, but what's something about you that people don't know or wouldn't expect? You don't have to answer that either. You can say, that's for the end of my career.
I'll just say I'm a lot more outgoing than people think, if you get to know me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a party trick that no one knows about?
You have to find out when I'm done playing.
Okay, all right, fair. And then I find this one weird, because sometimes I ask this to like David Stiff and some of the guys who are in a different part of their life now, but like, in terms for your goals, like your future goals, if we take basketball out of the equation, do you have any goals outside of just playing and your achievements in that space? Because obviously that is, I saw you tap the table before, like, there's endless, you know, like what you can do with your sport is still, you know, the idea that someone would put a limit on what you can and can't achieve, crazy. It shouldn't be that. So I don't want to ask you about your goals in basketball, because I feel like there's still so much to discover, right? But what about outside of that?
I want to be involved in sports media when I'm done. So that's definitely a huge goal of mine. Because I think I love talking about the game. It means something to me, and it's not going to stop having that value to me when I'm done playing.
Yeah.
And also I think I can be myself without a filter.
Yeah.
Like people can actually see my personality, whereas, you know, I still kind of got to be professional and guarded with how I go about stuff. So that would be cool to kind of just be myself for a change.
Yeah. I like that. I think having you involved in media, would you do that while you're still playing?
Yeah, for sure. Like if the opportunity came up, definitely would do that.
I think some people maybe need to listen to that at NBL. Get Bryce on the mic. And then I think you already answered this one, but if you want to go into it a little more, like how do you think people see you versus who you actually are? I think you kind of answered that. And do you think there's a gap? Like,
I mean, from my perception, I think most people really don't have a read on me.
Yeah. Do you like that though?
I love that. Like I told you before, I don't like people being in my head or me feeling like people can like figure me out.
Yeah.
Cause I always navigated through life just kind of feeling like I have to do this stuff myself. So you always keep everybody on guard. So if I feel like people don't quite have a read on me, that's what I prefer.
I like that. I think that we talked a little bit about your basketball career and I like the way you answered the question around like your identity being tied up in what you do, because I mean, if you just hear by the way you talk about it, like it means so much to you. And especially your part on self-belief, like I can't wait to listen to that back, you know, like for me, that's the bit I think I was most excited to be able to talk to you about, because I always like listening to people's why and like how they get to like, you know, being as successful on the court, but also like what drives them every day, like how do they believe in themselves, all those things. And I'm really excited for people to get to listen this back, because not only I'd hope that people learn a little bit about you, and I know you say you want to keep some parts to yourself, but like, I mean, humanizing professional athletes is like a lot of why I do this. Like you're a household name, but like you're also a human, you know? And I think that it's important I think for, you know, especially being like female athlete, like listening to you talk is like, there's so much where we put each other on pedestals, right? Like, and being able to humanize a person is huge. And I hope that we got a little bit out of that. And I really appreciate you coming on, because like, I don't know if you know this, but like you were one of the first Wildcats players to actually say hi to a few of us girls. Like there's not a lot of, and even in like my whole career in the WNBL, it's very rare that NBL players even come to games. Like it's so rare. And like I've seen you at a few, I know that you've been to a few in your career. So like it's important to me that like people even agree to sit down and have these conversations. Cause like I can then like, I know that when I'm doing clinics or like when I talk to younger boys and stuff, I can use you as an example on how to support women's sport, because I think that's super dope. Right. You know, like I tell my younger brother who he just got drafted in the AFL, I was like, if you do not go to the like AFLW games, I'm going to slap you across the face. Like you're like, it's just important for me for people to see the sport as a whole. And I'm giving you a shout out here. I think that is pretty special that like you, like, I know you, like you're Bryce Cotton, but like you are also Bryce to the people that you kind of come into contact with. It's pretty cool, pretty dope.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That's pretty cool. But now I'm still just little Bryce in my mind. That's how I'm gonna keep it.
Okay. Well, on that note, again, I appreciate you. This has been great, and I want all young athletes to listen this back and just listen to the self-belief part, because if you believe in yourself, like, damn, the possibilities are endless. But on that note, that was Under the Surface, Pumped by Reebok. I'm your host, Anneli Maley, and this was Bryce Cotton.